Okay, the numbers. So, number 1, ace. The aces are represented by the number 1. For them, these people have great desire and ambition. For them, it's all about self-expression. This life is self. So when you meet an ace, they think in terms of self. They want to initiate. They want to be the first seed of love if it's a heart, knowledge if it's a club. It might represent a new job if it's a diamond. They're basically like the Big Bang Theory of the deck. They bring something out of nothing, and the aces are like the youngest cards in the deck. They're here to prove to themselves and to others probably that they can do it, that they can be successful. They're like the workhorse that just keeps going and going and going. There's a lot of Aries energy in Ace, Aries being the first zodiac sign of the deck. Yeah, that single dot you see with the aces, that represents, their self-expression and their selfishness sometimes. You're going to see eventually a lot of their karma has to do with compromise based on the cards they have, which is always a funny trick the universe plays. Maybe a funny joke the universe plays on them, but, their goal is to initiate and complete and search for who they are. The twos. All right, so we go from 1, the self, to twos, which when we think of 2, we think of partnership. We think of 2 people. We want to be interdependent, not codependent, and not be too far apart from one another in our partnership. But this just concerns 2 people, team players, cooperative efforts. 2 represents harmony and synergy. And the one thing about the twos is there's a lot of fear in twos. They're a big fear card. So something to think about when you meet a 2. Next we have the threes. So threes represent indecision and choice, meaning you have a choice between 2 things. So when I look at a 3, I see this single. This is a pip, by the way, so it could be a heart, club, spade, diamond, whatever you want it to be. And then there's a heart here and a heart here. So the symbology is showing us there's a decision here, and there's indecisiveness here. And the way that we play this card is to line up our heart in one direction, or line up our brain in one direction, make the decision, be creative. Threes are very creative. Threes are the artists of the deck. They're the creator of the deck. They help to catalyze and create. And we're really looking for them to align whatever suit they're in a straight line like a compass. Now the threes have a lot of Gemini in them in a negative way. The 3rd house of astrology is Gemini. So they mentalize everything. So 3 of hearts is going to think about love a lot. They're not going to feel it in their heart as much, and that's their goal, is to feel in their heart, line up their heart. But because it's a 3, they're going to get inside of their head a lot with relationships. And so that's like one of the goals for the 3 is express themselves so that they take away that anxiety. 4s. So we go from the artist and the creator and the 4s, or the 3s, to the stability of the 4. Look at this, a strong box, strong foundation. It could be a room that keeps us safe. It could be a room that stifles us and stifles our creativity. So 4s are strong. They're organized. They build a solid structure. They provide safety. There's good foundation there, good organization. But these 4s can also struggle and micromanage or stifle, keep us stuck inside a box. There's, as they provide security, they also make decisions rooted in security, and they play it safe. The saying with the 4s is give them a box of Legos, and they'll build whatever you want. They're good builders in the society. They're grounded. They could also micromanage. So, the goal for the 4 is to provide that stability, but also to make sure that they're not stifling themselves or others, and that they do step outside of the box once in a while. 5. So we leave the stability of the 4, and we go to 5, which for me is the explorer of the deck. 5s are all about change. They're all about experiences. They're about moving, traveling. They're restless. There's some uncertainty here, and they're really the explorer of the deck. X marks the spot for the 5s. They're always looking for the treasure, and then when they find it, they're kind of dissatisfied, and they continue looking. And then they think they found it, and then they move on to something else. That's the restlessness of the 5. They can't help it. They prefer to experience things rather than play it safe. They're very open-minded. They're curious. They're really here to expand and discover things for us. A lot of ADD could be diagnosed with 5s in general. Okay? So, if that's happened to you or that's happened to, say, your children, it's a 5 thing. 5 is spinning, restless, crisscrossing. Look at the 5. It's an X, but you can also cross yourself. 5 has a strong desire for freedom. They don't want to be inside of the box of the 4. They want to experience life. Think of even our human body. We have 5 fingers, 5 holes on our faces. The 5s want to do things with others just to say that they did those things. So, this makes them really important. So 5s are the pioneers. They explore new things. They add a lot to society. They also have authority issues because of this freedom. A lot of times they have issues with their father or a disciplinarian that's just too restrictive because they don't like that. They don't like being restricted. Okay, 6s. 6s leave the 5, and it's a steady influence. It's a calming influence. It's monotonous. It takes them a long time to change. 6 is all about karma. It's cause and effect. So when we see 6s, we're going to receive what we put out there, and it's going to come back to us. There's some peace within the 6s, but there's also revenge because of that karma issue. So 6s are some of the greatest fighters, and they always remember because of karma and because of that revenge that they have kind of built. It's like engineered inside of them in a way. I would say the great thing that the 6s do is they provide a mirror to us, and they show us things that we can't exactly see ourselves, so that we can accept ourselves and have unconditional love for ourselves. So the 6s are really good at that. And 6s are also all about responsibility. So taking responsibility. If you see a 6 and it's showing up in a challenging spot, it usually speaks to you having to take responsibility for that. Many of the 6s can be psychic. They can tune into spaces like in between the heavens and the earth, They're the messengers. When you see a 6 in your spread as well, you might find your life purpose based on the card, based on the position. You might find your professional purpose. So these 6s are here for a special purpose, but it takes them a long time to kind of find that and evolve and develop. Sometimes it just feels like they're waiting. 7. So now we get to 7. In the middle of each suit is the 7. So we have 1 through 13. 7's right in the middle. 7 has a step in the mundane world, in our material world, and then it has a step in the spiritual world. It's like a pivot in a way, and it helps us pivot more into the spiritual realm, having a very unattached approach, not having expectations around outcomes, and letting go of control. So it's a mystical number. It usually represents a challenge in the suit that it's in, but if you play the spiritual side of it, you receive many benefits. Many 7s are diagnosed as bipolar. So bipolar and depression. Now, I've worked with cardologers who work with therapists, and they've also, studied this as well, that sevens have this, because they're asymmetrical, they can be on the high side. The seven of clubs would be really positive in this role, or if this card flipped upside down, they could be really negative. They could have pessimism. They could have negative behaviors and patterns. It's asymmetric, so there's a lot of flip-flopping there. They could be manic. They could be moody. So I do think, if you're a 7 birth card, there's definitely some grace you have to give yourself because you are a 7. These are difficult cards. They're a challenge, and the way we accept the challenge is by stepping into the spiritual, and that's where we get all of our gains from. The 7s also have power issues. A lot of them have past issues of abuse of power based on their karma, and they're here to kind of settle that. And they're here to learn how to use their power more gracefully. All right, 8s. 8s are all about power. 8s are about accomplishment. They have an ability to overcome any challenges in your spread, any issues. 8's also the symbol for infinity. A figure 8 is all about healing, grace, and force. So think about like a figure skater. They generate power through grace, through a figure 8. There's harmony there. A lot of 8s are like warriors, CEOs, they're leaders. They're also healers because they can overcome and help others overcome. The downside of the 8 is sometimes they can try to be too powerful. They can be too constrictive. They can try to control too much. There's some type of Scorpio energy with the 8s when you think of 8 in the 8th house. But in general, when you see these cards with 8 show up, they're going to help you overcome. And the whole goal of the 8 is to use your power with grace and not by trying to dominate. All right, the 9s. Another difficult card. 9s represent completion, disappointment, frustration, but it could also be fulfillment and enlightenment, graduation. If you look at the 9, you get up to the ladder of the 9. You can climb up high to the heavens and have accomplishment. If you climb down, you can climb into hell and be depressed and think that all of life is terrible and be a victim. And the 9s also have been diagnosed with severe depression, always feeling like a victim, and they get stuck in this role, and it's very hard for them. It's very unconscious, and it's hard for them to get out of that role. 9s, I'll give it to 9s. Their life, they are here to give to the universal good. 9 is the last number in the deck. And you have 10, of course, but that's 1 plus 0. But 9's the final number. It's completion, and 9s have to give to the good of the universe. They have to give to others without expectation that they're going to receive anything. And that's very hard for a lot of them. They always feel like they're giving and nothing's returned in their favor. But their pursuit in this lifetime is to give love, is to give knowledge. And once they start giving and doing it without expectation of anything in return, that's when they end up getting all their riches. That's when they end up being successful, finding happiness. It represents Jacob's ladder, climbing up to the heavens, and we want them to achieve that enlightenment, which is to uplift others and transcend them. And their goal is to give and to let go in order to be successful. 10. So we come into this 10. Successful number, fortunate, radiating money, radiating love, radiating knowledge to others. This is a card that can overdo it. This is a card that has a lot of abundance, accomplishment. On the downside, this card might not leave any space for themselves. So this space here is here to remind us to take space and not to overdo it. And when we would overdo it, we would look at the 2 5s. So there's 2 X's here. That's 1 X. That's the other X. Don't double cross yourselves in this lifetime. Don't overdo it. And, be efficient in what you're doing. Don't overcommit. You're going to just end up hurting yourself. So the 10 is interesting. It's 1 plus 0, which is the ace. is 1, 0 is the joker. So 10 can be an entertainer in many ways. And 10s also act like aces in a lot of ways as well. A couple of the 10s, the 10 of diamonds and the 10 of hearts, are in the center row of the spread, which I'll show you later on, and they can be focused on themselves. But in general, it's a really fortunate card. They shine and they overflow. When you see a 10 of diamonds walk into the room, everyone knows her. Or him. When you see a 10 of diamonds walk into a room, everyone looks at them. They shine like 10 diamonds. 11s. 11s are the jack of the deck. Jacks are 1+1. So there is some, you get 1+1. So 2 aces to equal 2, which is a master helper or partner. Now, the 2 1s also can give them this double life where you can't really ever fully believe in jacks because they could be dishonest. They might have issues with boundaries, but they're super creative. They could be immature or responsible, but they also can dive into higher initiation, higher forms of consciousness, royal power. Like, think of the king. The jack is right behind the king, actually. And so the jack is very powerful, and they're a self-generating card that can... it contains all the building blocks of life. They can destroy and rebuild new life, like Metatron's cube. I should talk about Metatron's cube. I'll do that in the sacred geometry section. But Metatron's cube will contain all of the building blocks of life that are needed to rebuild new life. 12s. 12s are our queens. Queens are our passive rulers. They are sensitive power. They're the flip side, the duality of the king. They're service-oriented. And queens are all about self-mastery. They have perfectionistic tendencies because they're here to master themselves. Their card, I'll show you later in the sacred geometry portion, has perfect symmetry. It's a 4x3 grid for any of the queens, and that signifies perfection. It also signifies or symbolizes like the golden spiral, which is a 1.618 ratio, and said to be that perfect symmetry, that perfect golden rectangle in life, which we see like in the Mona Lisa, we see in the way flowers grow, we see in snail shells. So when you think of the queen, think of perfection. They are the leaders in the spiritual world. They are the kings in the spiritual world, kind of. And they're that passive ruler that has internal mastery. They're elegant and proud. They're here to lead by example. And then finally, we get to our king, the 13s. So they're here to provide leadership, responsibility, authority. They're here to authorize and command. And when we think of the king, we think of 1 plus 3. So that's an ace that builds a safe structure. When you get 1 plus 3 is 4. And yeah, so like the 3 is building, the 3 is creatively building this safe structure. So you get 4, you get a kingdom. And the king is on the flip side of the queen. So instead of passive leadership, the king is external material leadership, acquisition, king of truth with the clubs, king of hearts providing love to their kingdom. And they're also represented by the golden mean or the golden ratio of 1.618, except it's represented by the Greek letter phi, which is 1.618. So that creates harmony, it creates duality with the queen. And a lot of these kings are here to step up into their leadership, into their authority, and other kings are here to learn how to not abuse their authority on the flip side.